Did you include Dreambox in it?
Good morning, and welcome to our next session for Digital Learning Day here at CCPS. Coming up next is Katie Regan over at Shockley Elementary School. She's going to talk all about digital differentiation and how Google Apps can help you accomplish that.
And remember, if you're tuning in live right now, there is her session resource in a back channel document on the EdTech Hub, and you can get to that by going to bit.ly/DLDCCPS. So if you want to tune in live and follow along and use that back channel if you have any questions for Katie throughout the presentation, it's bit.ly/DLDCCPS. And if you want to watch this video later or any other videos later, all the videos will be posted on that same page in the near future. So check back in.
All right, so here is Katie over at Shockley Elementary School. Take it away, Katie.
All right, great. Thank you. Hi, everyone. So I'm Katie Regan. I'm going to talk about digital differentiation and how to accomplish all of those differentiated applications using some of the Google apps. So hopefully everybody can see my screen here live. So I have my own little bit.ly there. If you ever want to use any of the resources, I'm going to be sharing lots of activities that you can just make a copy and implement in your class right away. So first, why digital differentiation? First of all, that front of the class real estate disappears when you're always trying to have some of your struggling kids right under your nose. Using digital differentiation, all the students have the content right there at their fingertips, and they can get in and play and interact and discover it for themselves. It also makes it easier to meet students at their individual level and where they are ready to start scaffolding the content. Any formative assessments that you might want are instantly organized in Google Drive for you by sharing them through Google Classroom. And it gives you a really easy way to simulate TEI style questions while encouraging the critical thinking in the students. For example, you can create drag and drops, hotspots, anything else that they might see in some of those question formats. So using the Google Suite and all the applications is also a really easy way to engage students. We're going to talk about some examples of Google Forms and how to create branched forms, not just what we're used to seeing with the county, but actually sending them out to students through links. Targeted Google Classroom assignments. We're going to share some Google Slide activities and some Google Draw activities, and talk through how to create some hyperdocs that you can share with your students for true interactive engagement. So first up are Google Forms. We're all used to seeing them as professional teachers shared through the county, but it's also a really easy way to share content with the students. Google Forms are self-grading formative assessments if you set them up as a quiz. It also helps you immediately identify students for remediation, and it can give the students immediate feedback and instant digital instruction on any questions that they missed if you set it up using a branch form. Now, a branch form is where each student response on the Google form is immediately identified as correct or incorrect. And if the students get the question correct, great, they're directed on to the next question. If, however, a student misses one of the questions, then a branched form can be set up to send the student to a quick little remediation video, maybe a Khan Academy link or something from TeacherTube. So they are immediately redirected. They're not developing bad habits, and they can learn from that missed mistake. And then the branched form can send them right back to the question to get them back on track. A quick tip when you're making branched forms, try not to add YouTube links, because even if it's something that you might see on your teacher computer, sometimes they're often blocked for student Chromebooks. And make sure you check through the Khan Academy videos. Sometimes he does methods that don't align with the Chesterfield County. But for example, if you're looking at multiplication box method, he does a great area model. So just be sure to preview any links that you have before you add them on to the student branched form. These links here in orange are some examples of branched form. The first one is for 5th grade circles. Thank you to Kim Bender for sharing that one out. It helps students identify the radius or the diameter of a circle, and then if they missed it, it sends them right back to some quick remediation and some quick review instruction before getting them back on track. There's also an example there for a branched form that could be used for 4th grade photosynthesis in science. Next is Google Classroom. It's something that most of us are probably already using in our classes, but many people don't realize how easy it is to differentiate using Google Classroom. For instance, if you want to assign an activity for just a select group of leveled students through Google Classroom, you go through almost the same process, create an assignment, but then in the creation, right next to the classroom you assign it to, there's a drop down that says all students. You can unclick all of the students and only select those that need remediation on a certain skill. For instance, this might be where you click some of your more advanced students to assign an early finisher activity so that they can get some enrichment. Or it may be where you select struggling learners where they need just a quick review to master a basic skill. And then not every student is dealing with the one-size-fits-all policy. Another click or tip for Google Classroom, if you want to share an interactive activity with students that will automatically make a copy with the student's name, make sure you're creating an assignment, not an announcement. Assignments will give you the option to make a copy for each student, and then it's very, very easy for the teacher to find in Google Drive so that you can pull up and use as a formative assessment. So one of the examples of something that you might share through Google Classroom with your students is interactive activities on Google Slides. The benefit of this is you can do one lesson over multiple slides as you go through. So for instance, the first slide might just be a very basic introduction of a skill. And then the second slide, for the students that are finished quickly and can move on, increases in difficulty, as does the third slide and so on. So some students may still be working on the very first slide, which is fine, that's their level. Other students may finish that a little quicker, but then they still have an activity and they're being pushed and challenged as they move through the second slide or the third slide. A tip for Google Slides is to use the master slide editing. It gives you a chance to create a background image so that when students are playing around with the drag and drop, just like they would see on an SOL TEI question, they won't end up moving your images. They'll only be moving the hotspot activated sites, and then they're not changing the size of a text box to triple the size of the page. So here are some examples of decimal TEI questions. This is a Google slide, and it's 3 different pages long. The first one is just very basic introduction to comparing decimals based on place value. The students can click the boxes here and drag them over to where they think they would line up, just like a TEI question would. And some students may stay on this slide for a little while, practicing the skill. Other students that finish it might be able to then move on to the next slide, which increases in difficulty, all the way down to the third slide, where then they're comparing fractions and decimals combined. There are also links on here for a 5th grade accelerated drag and drop example for matching circle graphs and data tables. And then there's also a link here for a Google image search about ocean organisms in science. Another example of easy way to differentiate using one document created by a teacher. Every student would have to do a Google image search to find the organisms that would match at different levels of the ocean. If the students have finished that quickly enough, then they can add a text box on the second slide to explain adaptations, all the way up to the third box where there's true enrichment and they're creating a creative writing. The next example of a Google app is Google Draw. This one is not used as often because it's not something that we see commonly, but it's still an excellent way to recreate TEI questions for students. We all know TEI questions are difficult for our students because it's hard for them to practice. So Google Draw is a great way to do that. It's also easy to differentiate the levels. You can create different activities on one Google Draw page. You could also create a different variation of the same Google Draw for easy, medium, or challenging. You could adapt the number of answer choices in a TEI question to help scaffold students. So some students might just be thinking about 3 answer choices. Some may be ready for 8 TEI box answer choices. And unlike slides, you don't have to stay within the page frame of Google Draw. You can copy and paste and drop lots of images all around the page frame on the outside. So students have a lot of click and drag options. Another tip for Google Draw, when you first open the document, it's a gray and white checkerboard background. It looks kind of boring. So don't forget to change the background color. It adds creativity, it adds variation, but also it makes it a little bit more engaging for the students. So here are a couple examples of Google Draw and how you could use these to differentiate instruction. This first link is what's pictured right there on the side, how to drag and drop some decimals when you're rounding. The first column is just rounding to the 10th place value. Students can select these boxes down below and drag and drop them into the correct boxes on how they would round to the nearest 10th. The next box then has students looking at 10th and 100th place value, and it can go all the way up in difficulty as you feel like your students are ready to practice. There's also a link there for a whole series of some Google Draw activities that could be used for science, from everything through 2nd grade up to 5th. One of the last things we'll talk about are Google Docs and how to use a basic Google Doc to create a hyperdoc. It gives students choice for their natural differentiation. Some students may be perfectly happy going on Dreambox, which is a perfect way to differentiate students. It meets them where they're ready, and it progresses for them as they progress through the skills. You can also use a hyperdoc to include links for strategic remediation skills. If you know a lot of people in your class are struggling with fraction decimal equivalents, then add a couple activities on there for fraction and decimal practice. The good thing about hyperdocs is that a lot of teachers are starting to get involved in using them right now. There's an entire site called Teachers Give Teachers, and they have literally hundreds of hyperdoc templates that are open for copying and reusing in your classroom. The big thing with hyperdocs is remember to make a copy and have students make their own copy, so every student has their own interactive page instead of typing on top of each other. I have a couple links here for the Math Digital Stations hyperdoc. One of them is what you see pictured there, where students can practice Dreambox and some free choice activities, but any other skills that you think they might need to practice. The second link there is an easy way to differentiate. Some of your students may have mastered these skills already and be ready for some enrichment practice on the skills. So the challenge version of Digital Math Stations, it has some of the same math content activities, but it's asking students to push their thinking a little bit further. For instance, measurement conversions. Can they create a rap to explain how they would convert? A 100-word challenge. Adding and subtracting, but in a fun and creative way that really pushes their thinking. And you can change it and make it a challenge, which students can add and subtract the closest to a sum of 100. The possibilities are endless here, and you can even create a section where these students invent their own hyperdoc activity. So those are some of the resources. They can all be found at that bit.ly there. And any other resources that were on here, I just want to thank the math department and some of my fellow Chalkley teachers for sharing. And it does seem like there are a couple questions or no questions. So one of the things that I think would be great as elementary teachers is trying not to reinvent the wheel. If there are any other activities floating out there, I know Kim Bender has been great about if you have created a Google Draw or a Google Slide, sharing it with her, and then they can put it up on the CNET or sharing it on Edmodo, so we can all share with each other instead of each teacher having to recreate everything for themselves. The more resources out there, the better, and then we're saving ourselves a lot of work, but also it's best for the children because then there are a lot of options for them to naturally differentiate too. So Chris and Katie, I think I am all set. So I will send it on back to you.
Thank you for that wonderful presentation on digital differentiation. You showed a variety of tools and from the Google App Suite and gave excellent examples of how they could be leveled for the learners in your classroom.
Makes me want to be a student in your class, Katie. Those are awesome examples.
Thank you.
All right, so coming up next at 11:20 is going to be Robin Seifert with Equatio. It's going to be a math app that you can integrate into your Google Apps. So see you soon.